Welcome to the BPM 360 podcast. I'm Russell.
And I'm Caspar. And together we will help you navigate the treacherous waters of the BPM adoption journey. I hope you enjoy the podcast.
All right, very much welcome to another episode of the BPM 360 podcast in combination, this time with What's Your Baseline? But first of all, Russell, my friend, how are you?
I'm great. I'm sitting here in Frankfurt. We just had a collective meeting of our company. As you know, I work in a virtual environment with our company, so it's nice to go face on face and hand to hand and back to back and bum to bum with the people. And talk concepts and process management. So it's for me it's heaven, and it's Friday. So thank God it's Friday. Yes. We're all looking forward to a great weekend, despite the autumn miserable weather in Germany. I'm still really looking forward to the weekend and having some quality time at home.
Very, very good, very good. And we're not alone today, as I mentioned earlier. We have Roland and JM on the call and in the podcast. Guys,
hey guys,
welcome.
How you doing?
Hey, thanks so much for having us. We love hanging out with y'all. And listen,
yes,
if we can do this professionally as well as personally.
That's absolutely true, JM, and I love that sentiment. So how's the week turning out for you guys? It's almost weekend, but how's life?
Well, this is the test run, right? The real weekend is next week. So at the time of this recording, as you all know, next week is Thanksgiving here in the US. So we're off on on Wednesday evening, for a very long weekend.
Yeah, I assume that's special because the number of holidays is not that high in the US. So you take every national holiday that you get. I mean,
it's a rare occasion, where we are, blessed with something like 30 days we could take.
Yeah, I would say, Russell, you're the last one to speak because Germany has more national holidays than they have working days in the year.
Bavaria. If I can do one recommendation, Bavaria, Catholic reasons, it's awesome. All those saints and whatnot, A-okay.
Yeah. Well, let me think. Where's my head office? Oh, yeah, it's in Bavaria.
Yeah, but you need to live there.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. No, I'm not complaining about the Netherlands. We got more than enough national holidays and holidays as well. But anyway,
I'm taking a very long weekend for the Thanksgiving weekend. My weekend, however, will be 49 days. So just to make sure that I take a little bit of time.
That's a long weekend.
Okay, that's what we call the longest weekend. Yes.
Yeah, I would say normally it's 48 hours, but
no, I'm extending it into my little sabbatical from the primary duties of my job. So I'll be moving around the sort of island of Shikoku in Japan, following an 88 temple pilgrimage for a total of 1,200 kilometers or 800 miles, depending on what part of the world you're in. So it's going to be one heck of a journey. I'm excited for that.
Man. Which also has awesome. Sorry.
Yeah. But how do you think Roland's going to take this? How is he going to survive?
I can tell you, we already recorded a couple of episodes, and the last one that we recorded was the year-end wrap-up, that we published just before Christmas. Okay. And a few days before, it was like 80 degrees, and I was wearing short clothes and whatnot, And then you have to get into the holiday mood. Oh, JM, how was 2024 for you?
Oh, you serious? Well, that's clever. That's a clever move. Yeah, fake
it is. But you got to be very confident that nothing really disruptive happens in that last 4 weeks of the year. Then.
Oh, I just turn on Mariah Carey until next year.
Good.
It's all good.
Yeah. Please no more M&A until at least 2025, folks. Come on. You got to think of your podcasters. How are we going to take a break?
Oh boy. Yeah. It's going to be one of those episodes. Let me try to get it back on track a little bit. We're very happy to have you guys here. We had a very good time and a blast when we did the first, let's say, part one of the collaboration. What I would like to do together with Russell today is slightly different, though. We're not going to be talking about the content as much, at least certainly not in the first part of this episode. What we would like to do, and I have to give the credit to the actual podcast that gave me this idea. So a shout out to the Drei Prozessphilosophen, as they had this wonderful episode where they went a little bit of soul searching of how did you end up in BPM. So that's what we're going to be doing, and we have guests, and I was brought up in a very polite way in the Netherlands, which is not always can be said in one sentence. But anyway, guests go first. But JM, can I start with you? Roland was already pointing in your direction, I saw, so he's throwing you in the bus. Would you be so kind to share with us how did you end up in process management, and why does it appeal to you?
Wow. Well, it's a long and sordid tale, but I'll start with the very beginning. I never intended to be anywhere near process management. When I was growing up, I come from a performing arts family. So when I was born, the day after I was born, my mother swaddled me in a cloth and put a clown nose on me. And we published the headline, "A Clown is Born," in the papers in Canada. Because I grew up as a clown. I was literally performing on stage for children around the world, recording. I have a gold record sitting in front of my eyes right over there.
Wow.
That's my gold record. So I was the youngest songwriter in Canada for a small amount of time. Like, I'm a performing artist. And when I was maybe, I don't know, 8 or 9, my mom came, she said, "This is it's a wonderful life we're having today, but I just need you to understand, you can do anything you want in this world, but don't do the arts for money, please. Trust me, it's harder than you think."
So if you want to become anything you want in the world, you became financially irresponsible?
Well, that's the thing, is that I also had an aptitude for engineering and decided I was going to pursue an education in engineering. And what I loved, when I was very young, I loved seeing how things got put together. So mechanical engineering, and particularly manufacturing engineering, made so much sense to me. And I was like, this is a beautiful sort of orchestration, a dance, if you will, of all these robots that assemble large contraptions out of parts. That's fantastic. Went into manufacturing engineering, but in Canada, if people were familiar with sort of the 2000s in Canada, manufacturing was a very challenging time for Canada. A lot of jobs were migrating out of country. So there was a big sort of outsourcing of, like, even manufacturing plants to other parts. And the one that I was working at when I was interning during university moved down to Mexico. And it looked like this industry wasn't going to be necessarily the most stable for me financially, because that's what I wasn't doing performing arts. I was doing that. I still do performing arts. And so when I graduated, there was a career fair, and they had a booth outside, and there was one that was like a big manufacturing company. There was a car plant. There was a thing. There's a bunch of places you could work, and then there was a whole section called "So You Don't Want to Work in Your Chosen Discipline," and it was all the manufacturing, all the management consulting companies, and we're like, "You don't want to work in your chosen? Come, become a junior consultant, get paid peanuts to kill yourself on behalf of the company." And of course, I gravitated towards that because 2 reasons. Number one, I thought it was more secure. I mean, I didn't know anything. I was 23. Number 2 is that it was something that required a level of communication skills that pure engineering didn't seem like it was going to value at the same level. Management consulting said you need people to explain yourself well and to bring people along on the journey with you. Not something I've been doing my whole life, just as a clown or as a theater performer or as a somebody working in sketch comedy. So I thought, interesting, this might be a good fit for the two of them put together. Manufacturing engineering giving me this sort of systemic view, performing arts giving me this explanation capability, and that's the first sort of introduction I had to a professional process management practice. I worked for a big consulting company in Canada, working on their process practice. And I'd learned about it in school as part of manufacturing, but it was like a 2nd or 3rd tier course. This now was the first thing I did. And it only grew from there, from working on it to becoming it being my primary focus, moving away from things like project management, just into a process practice. And then eventually joining up with the vendor who made the product that I loved so very dearly, and continuing to grow into the roles that they offered me, from professional services to solution engineering and now to global evangelism. Process became my breadwinner and sort of the core of my heart. And it's been quite a journey over the past. Now it's 15 years actively working in the space, but with learning before, it's now getting closer to 2 decades. So I'm really happy to be here now, and it was quite a circuitous but wonderful route that I took, I think.
That's a wonderful story, JM. Thanks for sharing that. And it does put a lot of things in perspective. I mean, we worked together for a couple of years. So now things make sense.
Now things make more sense.
Yeah, but thank you very much for sharing. And
especially around the performing arts, yes. Now a lot of things fall in place.
Absolutely, absolutely true. And then Roland, same question for you.
Yeah, I had that wonderful answer to your two questions, but then JM so eloquently gave us his life stories that I forgot what I wanted to say. So maybe it's a little bit less enthusiastic. I don't have a golden record, I don't have a clown's nose. So, but the way how I got to this whole topic was, and some of you might know, I spent the first 11 years of my adult career in the armed forces. Right, so driving around with main battle tanks, I'm an officer, blah, 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 very serious stuff, right? And then at some point in time, at the tender age of 29, I decided, well, let's retire, let's do something else, because what would happen? What's the realistic career perspective? You're going to end up as a major or lieutenant colonel, not everybody can become a general. You end up in a great building along the River Rhine, shuffling paper from left to right, and that was a little bit boring, So I left and I joined Anderson Consulting, or how they are now known as Accenture, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, you get how much money for this? That's great,
Yeah.
So obviously the firm, we all know the business model of consulting organizations, right, Russell? Wink, wink. They sent the young kids somewhere, and I ended at the Deutsche Bahn, the German railway, right?
Oh, yeah.
Large project that was at the time when they deregulated, when they split the state-owned, still state-owned, the Deutsche Bahn into 5 different areas, and we were working with the cargo division. And they wanted to stand up a customer support center, greenfield, which is awesome. Right. So one of the things they did is, well, we have to figure out what we do. Right. And they used a tool called Eris. I don't know if you've heard about it. Small little drawing tool.
Ever so slightly.
Yeah. So, it was Eris 3 at that point in time. I'm pretty sure I have some installation media somewhere. And what they said is, it's like, don't touch it. You can break things. Right? And really? Guess what happens? What every barely out of puberty young man at the
you touch it and you break it.
30, you go there, So that was my first exposure to process management, and I thought, oh, okay, and then I moved on and I worked at Deutsche Telekom as a client, and we did processes there, not in a modeling tool, in Word, which was awesome because they said, no, our employees can't read diagrams. Also interesting. So we wiggled around with Word 95 and all those wonderful tools, very professional. But then it started to grow on me, right? So I did this, and then in 2003 I joined IDS Shear, and the rest is history, as they say, right? And I do this stuff now for, I don't know, 27 years.
Yeah, long time.
Yeah. I had hair when I started. Oh, you won't believe it. Yeah.
No, I don't. But
right.
I'll take your word for it. Great. I mean, thanks for sharing that as well, Roland.
And I think that puts a lot of things also in perspective.
Yeah, so that's true. That's true.
What was I saying? There's some character traits around you, Roland, that now it gives it a bit of perspective. Your hard consulting background, an officer. Tough guy.
Yeah. Absolutely true. Well, let's see if we can dissect Russell's character then, and if things fall into place with him. So, Russell, same question for you.
Oh, I thought we were just going to do the guess, huh?
No.
No, now comes the interesting part.
I'm going to go as well.
We want to hear it, Russell. Wash all your dirty clothes now. All your grievances with your previous employers.
I think I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast, but say my quite early during the school time, I really got into sciences. Yeah, so I really loved chemistry, and that was something I knew despite all my other, like, say, schoolmates going, what am I going to do? I don't know. And I said, 7th class, I already knew I want to study chemistry. It was just something that just clicked with me. I loved the experience of burning stuff and exploding stuff. But on the other hand, I also like just to understand more in detail how things around you, why metal conducts electricity, or why it's bendable, or why something breaks. And so I was really into this level of understanding, and especially during the studies, I really like this idea of how do you actually get to understand something that you can't see. And it was all about, then you have like atom models and, have molecule models, and then you think about how they change and transform and why they bond and why they don't bond. But you never had a microscope to actually look at something. You always had like a mind model on how things worked. Now, as in that time, as I was studying many, many moons ago, they were also saying, look, in chemistry, you're not going to get a job. This is not going to work, and forget it. They said, the professor came in the first, what's it called, note he had. He said, half of you will not survive the first 2 years. Yeah. And the rest of you're not going to get a job. It was kind of like, wow, fantastic. Super pep talk, like that. But then also in that time, then IT started becoming a big thing. Yeah. So during my PhD, I jumped onto a working group that was doing a lot of programming. We had VAX, VMS, Fortran, and doing and it was in the context of biotechnology processes, they controlling and measuring them. So I drifted off from chemicals more to the technical chemistry, it was called, and more macroscopic, say how to scale up big size reactors and so on. I was getting more into the mechanical kind of like world. And IT. So it is like this balance between that. Coming to the end of my PhD, I got some job offers from the chemical industry. One may not believe it, also a bit IT related. But then I got a call from Berlin from an IT company, and he was saying, well, yeah, we need somebody to work with us, and I see in your publications that you've actually done something. We need somebody now to work on a project, for an expert system for Salzgitter for the steelworks. And I said, yeah, but I've got a job offer somewhere down in Austria on the countryside. He says, well, maybe, if you've got a girlfriend, I'll buy 2 tickets. You come to Berlin and maybe you just go for a meal, and I'll tell you about our business and what we do. Yeah, that was the end of that then. Yeah, so land in Berlin, you say, yeah, let's go for a meal. And you say, oh, I think I want to stay in Berlin. Yeah. I was saying, a very rational decision made on behalf of a matrix with pros and cons and, what you do. Yeah. I took the decision to endeavor in an IT career more than follow down the route of chemistry.
Yeah. There's two thoughts. Yeah, there's 2 thoughts that come into mind. So one is, Russell, we're all the same. JM remembers when I switched jobs a couple of years ago, I did the very same thing. Very elaborate Google sheet, what's important for me and how does it scale and all that stuff. But the other thing is, one of my school friends, he studied chemistry as well and in Frankfurt. And his pep talk was like, oh yeah, you need to have a PhD to be the guy who's allowed to empty the trash in the lab. And then after he was done, he went into real estate development and made his riches somehow,
Now let's do the jump from IT to process. And this is something I had a project at Schering. They were, then Bayer and whatever. And it was more about an IT system to manage and control the, like they had these vessels that they were for batch production that were being rotated, and they had to have like a tracking system of which ones had been cleaned, need to be maintained, refurbished, and so forth. And it was all like an integrated system. So I had the chemists, the engineers there from they were actually driving had the requirements from a business perspective. And we had 3 different IT providers that had to actually get their heads together and make this work. Yeah. And all the meetings were a complete chaos because everybody just saw their part of the function and their interface and what they needed. And there was just no stringent structure and line in getting this to work. And then coming back, and then I sat down. Actually, I was just somebody who didn't really know a lot about that. I hadn't been in the business very long. But then I actually visualized the process from let's say, an information flow and from a requirements perspective, and then underlaid it with the IT systems and functions that they have to provide along this process. So you had like the material flow or the material handling with the statuses, blah, blah, blah. And so I had this visualized out, and then going into the meetings, all of a sudden, everybody was being able to talk to each other and get things sorted. And I won the deal. So I was in sales then, and just by structuring this and going more process-oriented about it, it actually worked out. Now, methodology-wise, that was with Visio, and it was, of course, it was just whatever, yeah? But from that moment on, I really dug into it, and I came across, Idea Share with this more, like real fundamental thoughts, models around how to go about modeling. And I really bought into the idea that to understand business on a complex matter, especially in the context of digitalization, IT projects, and the business doing something with a certain outcome, the processes is the answer on bringing these worlds together and forming a model to explain something as complex macroscopically, in a way that, say, you can have other people, say, communicating, exchanging, collaborating, and making things more efficient. And that was actually the moment where I said, I want to work for this company. So that was the first time that actually I applied for a job, or I tried to work myself into a job and did some calls with the head of the chemicals, consulting department. And I got myself into that job there. So that was like, that was how I then drifted from chemistry to IT, and actually had this compelling moment in sales that to get people to understand each other, a process model, a structured process with its model and its components is super helpful in getting people to talk to each other and understand each other and find a way forward. And that was actually my compelling moment.
But Russell, that's only when you have an EPC for the old people, plotted out on an A0 that goes in zigzag lines over it.
We're going to come back to that one, Roland.
Space.
We're going to come back. That one's going to bite you in the ass by the end of the episode.
Well, I like what you said, because we see this as a communication method, right? Like the most frustrating thing I've ever happened to me is whenever I try to explain myself and people look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, I need a better way to explain this to you. Let's agree what that language looks like, and like maybe I'll make it in that, and then you'll actually get what I'm going for.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool.
So right, Caspar, how did you come into this?
You got a minute?
It's your podcast,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I'll try to keep it short.
It's my podcast, and I can cry if I want to.
No, when I was an early teen, I had astronomy as a hobby. So I had my own telescope. I looked at the stars virtually a couple of nights a week. I've been to a lot of interesting places, but the beauty about astronomy is that it all adheres to the laws of physics, and the laws of physics are actually quite predictable. And they have to do with numbers and with structure. So very early on, I realized I like structure, I like predictability, and even when I was a little bit older, I had a knack for statistics. I loved it. When I would go play mini golf with my family, I would actually draw a graph afterwards of the 18 holes and the development of the score and stuff like that. By hand, by the way. There were no computers at that time. That's how old I am. But anyway, so when I got into university, I studied industrial engineering. So there's a bit of a parallel with JM here. I like to know how things work. So how do they do it? On Discovery Channel is one of my favorite programs. And there was this one course that I did, which was an optional course. It was called Processes and Systems. And it had everything to do with, you have a process which has 7 states or 7 steps. What is the probability that you go from step 1 to 2? And what's the probability that you go back from 2 to 1, et cetera, et cetera. And I just loved the cleanliness of that. And the fact that you would know with a certain reasonable amount of certainty what would happen. And it made me actually graduate in the applicability of process simulation for the consultancy world at Ernst & Young Consulting. that was very nice. But I already discovered that it was more like a communication platform than anything else. And that was something that I heard other people say as well. So when I started working, first I went into a bank. And why? Because they just had the best offer, to be honest, at that point in time. I could have started at Ernst & Young Consulting, but I could do a management traineeship or a corporate traineeship at a bank. And that was at the end of the 90s. That was the job to have as a student. So I just went for it for 2 years. I ran away screaming, by the way, because in a bank, end of the 90s, there was no process to be seen anywhere. It was chaos. I think it's still chaos. But anyway, and then I moved into the manufacturing industry for almost 2 decades. And the first project that they put me on was a process harmonization and standardization project. And the thing that they did well is that they invited all of the different business units of the company to give input into designing a process. And only then would they go in to see how SAP would support that. Of course, they went completely off the rails by too much customizing, but I mean, that was a bit of fashion in the early 2000s. But it was a good example for me of, I like this stuff. And then every job I had at that company always had a process component to it. Didn't matter if I've been a global supply chain manager. The whole problem that we had was that the whole S&OP structure was just a big mess. So it's a process optimization project. Once that was done, I lose interest. I move on. And then after McKinsey came by for like the 5th time in my career, and they basically asked me, how many direct reports do you have? I said, well, 4. Okay, that's less than 8. So your job's redundant, period. Okay, well, that's how those things work. So I'm totally fine with that. And I ended up with a company that was mentioned before, where there's a product that JM really loves. And by the way, I still love it too. So I worked for them for about 6 years, and I'm still in the process industry. That's sort of my story.
I didn't even know that JM worked for Microsoft. When you love Visio so much, Caspar, tell me all about it.
Yeah. So I used Visio a lot when I graduated, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah, and there's one point I think is interesting as well. So once you get onto this process thinking, all of a sudden everything is a process, so you're running around, and other people that don't buy into it, then maybe there's other people that are more data driven and they say everything's data, as they like you when you're mini golfing. But once you get hooked onto the process, it's like you see processes all over the whole world and people that are not into that mode, they really think you're crazy.
But it's you have that.
Oh, come on, not a nag. I'm just getting a coffee. But have you thought about the process?
Oh, no, Russell, that you have that elsewhere as well. When I was in the military, riding the train, and you're looking out of the window and say, oh, where would I deploy my troops here? That's a nice little patch of forest. I could put some people there, So it's the same thinking.
Professional deformation.
Oh, yeah.
Can you imagine what kind of a happy and crazy place at the same time an airport is for me? Because everything is a process at an airport. Except the people the people who need to go to a gate. They simply are unaware of anything.
It's like in business. It could be so easy if they want any people involved.
That's why we want to automate everything. Let's automate everything. Get rid of the people.
Yeah, true. JM, sorry.
That's the idea. Like, I feel like there's so much chaos in this world right now, and it's really hard to understand it. But at least when you have a lens through which you can see it, and for me, that's process.
Yeah,
things start to make a little more sense. I mean, sure, they're still crazy, but at very minimum, I can see sort of why things are happening more than I can if I just take an unstructured view into the things around me. And particularly when interacting with other companies, I can say, as a consumer, I can see what your customer experience you're trying to do is. It's terrible, but I can see what you're trying. And let me see if I can help you by changing my behavior because you're not changing your processes to meet my needs. And so at least it gives you some sort of I don't know. I don't think of it as a superpower, but I think of it maybe as I'd say a little bit of an advantage in a world where it's whether or not you want it to be, it's process driven, and often those processes are bad or broken.
Yeah, and what I like about it as well is it was originally for my job I was into software sales. And I always had this with my department. I had this dispute about this. That we need a product, then we can sell it. And I said, yeah, but we haven't got a product. And we're not going to get any investments to develop a product. So we have to sell the concept. And when you go out and say, and how do you go about that? That you go to a customer and you don't really have any product, but you want to sell him, say, something like an IT system at the end of the day. And the means what I found is that to say, okay, so let's have a look at your process, and visualize that, and then I will explain to you the solution that we will provide you at the end of this project. And then the other component is that, to a certain extent, your project approach on your procedures on how we're getting there is in itself a transformation process. So it's like also explaining and getting the trust of the person that at the end there will be a good outcome, without you currently having anything to show. It's not going to say, hey, look, this is the product, I'll sell you the license, then you implement it, or put the CD in, then it's working. You're actually selling a dream of a future to be that is completely untangible. And to be able to sell that is not just saying that's the world you're going to get. You have to say, how are we going to get there? And how do you make that more tangible, how it will be different, because it won't just be a screenshot of something where you say, and this is where you enter your sales order. The software itself and what it does is untangible. So here the processes and the visualization really helps in actually selling a concept to people and selling projects. I mean, ultimately,
and
that's
Russell,
what we have to do as well every day.
I'm with you. And I work for multiple vendors, and they all think the same way, right? Oh, yeah, I just need to get my license quota and whatnot, Imagine what would happen if there was an open source software, which I'm flabbergasted that it really doesn't exist, Where you just say
that up, right?
Where you just say, you get the software for free, and we make money from selling you T-shirts. Right. So imagine that. That would be the ultimate dream of your concept in reality, because then you make it's very clear you make your money by improving things and not just transactional license selling. And that is, I think, very much more honest.
Yeah. Something to talk about after we close out the episode recording.
how to make money from open source projects? Oh, that's an interesting.
How to sell T-shirts. Actually,
we did have an episode on that. I think Roland a while ago.
Yeah, with Avi. We had
really
with
good.
Avi. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, very good. All right. Wow. So thanks very much for sharing those stories, because I think it's also good for people that listen to your podcast and to our podcast know a little bit what kind of crazy people are actually hosting it, and I love that.
What a mix of people! Yeah, the nerd looking at the stars. The guy exploding and burning everything. The other one marching up and down, and then there's some performing artists, and they all come together and they have one thing in common: it's process management. I mean, that always shows how open this world is, how inclusive it is. Crazy guys.
Yeah. And I always was always thinking that the JM's camera had a bad spot on his nose, and now I know he just didn't take off his clown nose. His only.
I got you, Roland.
Yeah. All right. Oh, so which brings me and Russell into that second part of today's episode, and now we're gonna turn up the heat a little bit for you guys. And Russell, you wanna explain that or drive it?
Okay, so what we'll do is I'll give you to you have to take a choice. So just think you're in a situation where you have a project, certain situation that you have to apply something of what we've talked around in the context of BPM, and you have to decide either this or that, and give us a spontaneous answer, and then we elaborate on it. So we'll do one for practice.
One question. One question. Yeah. Are you familiar with the term "I pledge the fifth"?
No, I am, but you're not.
Dang.
Sorry, I look too many. I watch too many U.S. crime stories and series. You're not pleading the fifth. No,
yeah, but Roland,
you have to give an answer.
And the first term, I think this is just right for you as well. So you're in a project and you have to decide, but you can take this decision: BPMN or EPC.
I don't care.
That's not a choice.
That's not a choice.
Both. You have to make a choice.
Both.
No.
It is just a notation with a certain grammar to show the same thing. So is English better or German better or Dutch?
That's not a question. Dutch.
Okay, BPM.
German.
So you see how there you go.
BPM.
Yeah, you see, Russell, we had to just tickle him a little bit.
Exactly. And here's the thing. I my answer is the same, BPMN, and there's a reason why. I think EPC is more functional. I think it's better. I think it's a better modeling notation for a lot of reasons, and I think that organizations that embrace it have a greater flexibility in their ability to address problems with process. I don't care.
All right, there you go.
Because the truth is that BPMN is what people are standardizing on, and there are fewer fights. And if I can fight about one fewer thing in my project, it's a win for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll choose BPMN. The interchange language is like relatively well established. I'm going to get people in the automation group who are going to know what I'm talking about, and people who've worked in other companies who don't know what our methodology is will have a great starting point for conversation. I choose BPMN.
Thank you, JM. Thank you.
you,
Now
JM.
I have to re-edit
Yeah, but Roland, you
our
have to
shorts.
thank him because he took the decision. He took
Yeah.
the executive decision and said,
He's
I
the
don't
adult in
care.
the room.
Although
Yeah.
it's better, I'm taking the more standardized, and I don't want to have a battle about this methodology. That was a good call.
Russell,
I salute
can
you. I salute you.
Okay, Russell, what's your baseline.com/shorts1? And you will hear that
I
JM
know
has a
that.
complete different tune to this,
Yeah, but we call that how do you call that? I don't
Evolution?
know how to call it in English, but that's called evolution.
Yeah.
That's called in Germany. You say, was interessiert mich, das was ich, der Schmarrn, den ich gestern erzählt habe.
Oh, no.
What do I
Was
care what I
juckt mich
said yesterday? It's
Yeah.
what I say now that counts.
It was Adenauer. It was Adenauer. Yeah.
I'll give you the way that we say this in Dutch. It's called voortschrijdend inzicht. Now try to do that one.
Nope.
It's basically increasing insight.
Okay, that's cool.
So your insight increases over time. You basically f around and you find out.
But ultimately, I mean, JM, your argumentation there, I think, is absolutely. I also have exactly the same opinion about EPC, but I would not go into that discussion about the model type. I say, as long as we agree on one, it's the same with the language. German grammar is fantastic for describing things, but English is more common, so let's take this more deficient language that everybody speaks, and let's move forward.
In all honesty, I do have a question, guys. Has any one of you in the last 5 years seen a project that was using EPC?
There was one.
Yes, absolutely. I saw it last week.
Really?
A company was like, "Hey, here's all our models," and I was like, "What? These are all great EPC models, and you're doing really well with this project. All right, cool." And I was honestly taken aback. Literally last week. Yes.
Wow.
Okay.
I did not expect that.
No.
I did not expect it either. That's why I was literally taken
I
aback.
don't think they did, but Roland, they didn't take the decision for EPC in the last year. Most probably
they
they took
didn't
that
make the
decision
decision.
10
It
years
was made
ago.
years ago.
Yeah, probably.
More in maturity, but they stuck with their model type and method, and that's I say that's fine. So anyway, this was good fun.
Oh, now we're getting
This was just
serious.
a test, right?
Now we're
Yeah,
getting
now we're getting
serious.
serious.
Yes. Ooh.
Well, yeah, most probably maybe this one's a bit more complicated. So you're in a project, and you can't have everything under control, but so you have to take a choice. Do you choose for a tool that you do your project with a tool, and that's decided on everybody uses this tool, or a method? And that you say you don't have a tool, but you can get the team to agree upon one method to do the project. What's your choice? Tool versus method. Big project, big process management project.
I have a pretty simple answer for that. It's going to be method. And the secret of all this is that process has to be a language for communication. And honestly, it is more costly than it is beneficial when that language is not understood by everybody. It becomes a Tower of Babel situation. So if I don't have a tool, I can make it work. It's hard. It's going to be more costly, but there's a substantially lower chance, a risk chance of misunderstanding each other and crashing the whole thing into the ground. I'll take a method over a tool every day. And I think that's pretty consistent with how, like, at least how I operate today, even in a tool vendor, because the first thing I always ask is not, how can we use a tool better? Rather, how can we make a decision on how we're going to move together forward together, and then how does that get reflected in a tool? So I very much believe it's the method has to be there first.
Yeah, I
You're
agree.
nodding.
I agree. It's the method. The challenge that I see is, as always, it's the damn people. Because I've worked in projects where a lot of people just didn't care, didn't understand. When you try to go in and say, hey, we need to do this, you need to create a blueprint as part of your SDLC, and I want you to create this and that, and they just shrug and say, that's not what I'm here for. I'm coding, go away, right? So it's the challenge is to quote unquote sell it so that you gain acceptance with the people, because otherwise, they say, and I literally worked in a project where I asked the client, ex KPMG guy, that was during my KPMG, I said, well, which architecture tool do you use? And he had that well-knowing smile, made a little pause and said, whiteboard. I said, oh, right. So that was very interesting, and the project was interesting.
Yeah.
I can imagine that. Yeah.
Okay, so next situation. So you've got two projects to choose from, and one you have well-established process owners but no process experts at all, and the other one you have a fair amount of process experts but no ownership, no process owners. Which one do you choose?
Oh, it's me.
I choose. Now you can start. You can start, Roland.
I choose the one that has process owners. I can't train people, right? I can't train the mechanics. I can't train the methodology. It's a hard time to train attitude. I would say it's not possible, right? So I'd rather have the people who are convinced, who drank the Kool-Aid, and who have an interest and the drive to put things into place.
I agree. We also want to connect this, right? Like the projects we were working on need to make sense strategically and need to align with the way the organization wants to work. We need an unbroken chain of influence between the work we do today and the way that the company operates its business. And if you don't have ownership there, that link gets broken. And it's so much harder to justify that the project continues or expands. It's so much harder to justify resourcing for this project or that it should be featured in any sort of communications and change management. It's the owners that are going to be that link.
Yeah, but I'm really curious, guys. There's that wonderful German word called Leitungslösung. What do you guys think? Because when I looked into your faces, you didn't like my answer. I guess at least that's what I read. What do you think? What's more important, SMEs or process owners?
I tend to agree actually, but the reason why I agree is that how you explain it, Roland, works for me pretty well. You can't train character or attitude. It's there or it's not there.
Yeah.
Process expertise is something that you can train. Yeah, of course it is. Some people have an aptitude for it, of course. You can't train everybody into an expert, but it's trainable. It's something that you learn on the job as well. But ownership is one of those things for me that comes way before expertise, if I have a choice. Russell?
Yeah, there's something about these process experts when I go into projects where I say I'm so happy when I really get it. When you walk across these real gems of process experts that really have the deep insights, that really make the difference between wishful thinking and reality. And this is something where I principally agree on this ownership, that it's really hard to grow and get people into this situation that they advocate for change and process management. So, and how do you train that? It's kind of like, oh yeah, you have to take one out and replace him with somebody who, but then he has to have an affinity to the whole business and the company. So I get it, but I also think projects without real experienced process experts that have been there, done that, in the depths of it, I don't think it's quite so easy just to say you just train it. You can train it, how to model, and there's certain skill sets there. But I love when I go into projects to sit down and I realize in the meeting there's this still person in the corner, and they start speaking up, and I said, a process expert, well, a champion process expert.
Yeah, but Russell,
and then everything reveals, everything makes sense. They dig out all the dirt from underneath, and the insights I get there, it really makes my day. If having talked to real,
but
experts.
isn't that a matter? And I oversimplified. I'm fully aware of that. Isn't that a matter of capturing the input? Because your question was not an either or. The question was, what is your preference, right?
Yes.
So I want to give people the allowance to think in a different way. That's why I said ownership, right? If you have your boss telling you, Russell, speak freely, you won't get punished, right? Maybe you believe me, maybe you don't, but you can't do that. Yeah. But then is the question where, of course, you need somebody who knows the process, right?
No, but listen,
how do you get this?
The type of person that Russell just described are those little gems, and they're typically not shouting that from the rooftops. But those are people that either have worked in that job for a long time, so they know every little in and out of it. The reason why I also think ownership, if you have a choice, ownership is the one that you should go for. Is have any one of you ever played the game Digger when you were younger? It's this little thing where you see. You start to dig underground looking for diamonds, and they come in different sizes and shapes, and you don't know where you're digging exactly. But in that whole field of what you're digging, I think that the chance of digging up a process owner is so much smaller than digging up somebody with a process expertise. That's true. Yeah. So at the moment that you start digging in your organization and you find an owner, capture it, cherish it.
Again, was that a Nintendo, Atari, or Commodore?
No, that was a. Oh God, I don't know. I think I actually know it from one of those arcades.
Russell, that's all not true.
We might need to explain that to people what an arcade actually is.
Yeah.
That was
what about graphic for that?
No, Russell.
Just watch Wreck-It Ralph, and then you know what an arcade is.
Russell, that's all not true. That was Caspar's parents who wanted to get their garden dug over, and they told us.
There's some garden work. There's a diamond somewhere. Go.
Yeah. Caspar, you can find it. If you find it, you can keep it.
I found a lot of things, but I never did that much digging in the ground actually. But in computer games, more than enough.
It's the mismatch that kills me here. It's because here's the thing: if I have a process owner but no process experts, then I have an onus and I have the sort of political power to go out and get them, or to find them, or to bring them in, hire them, staff up a project, right? But if I have process experts but no process owners, what I have is a recipe for frustration.
Oh yeah.
Because the truth is, that's how you lose those guys. When you have no ownership and you see, and Russell, I'm sure you sat, somebody in the corner of the room speaks up and says, here are all the problems and here's what I've seen. And then the next words out of their mouth is, and I've been saying this for years. No one's ever done anything about this. I'm 62. I need to get the heck out of this place. And honestly, guys, I don't feel like you deserve my talent. I've heard those.
That is so recognizable.
I don't like that. I would prefer the opposite, where I have to find them using an owner rather than have to say a person who knows their stuff and hates it.
I really relate. I've been there. We've been there. We've done that. So next one. So you've got this decision now. You've got two projects. You've got to decide. Yeah. So and you have to split it. One, a process mining project, and the other one, a classic BPM process documentation project. Which one do you choose? It's
your turn, JM.
Documentation.
Yeah, that's my turn.
Introducing BPM to an organization.
I get this question a lot, and there's a cop-out answer of it depends, and I'm not going to do that. But that is the right answer. But I think that if I were to have in a vacuum ask between process mining and process modeling, the truth is in this market, I would say process mining, and I'll give you a reason why. I think right now, with the way the economy is, with the expectations on a lot of organizations to prove everything, process mining is often incontrovertible evidence. And that evidence is compelling. Stakeholders want to see. That's why they look at BI dashboards. They want to know the KPI threshold value. Are you better or worse than this? What's my NPS? So are my customers enjoying what I'm doing? What's my turnaround time, my on time and full? These all stats that they're used to seeing. Process mining, well, it's not quite the same. is close enough that it's more familiar. So convincing somebody with evidence is almost always going to be easier. Convincing somebody with a promise of a future is nicer, and I would say more functional, but it's a harder sell, particularly right now. So I would start with process mining and then make my way into process modeling, just for honestly making the right case to the right stakeholder for value.
Yeah.
All right.
Russell, I have 3 questions for you. How mature is your organization?
I like it. I ask the questions, you give the answer.
Yeah. No. In all seriousness, if you would ask me that question, where should I start? I would say, okay, how mature are you in process, right? In what you're doing? How much money do you have, and how much time do you have? And that would determine what you would do. Because everything that JM said, getting the data and all that type of stuff, the lean people and other folks have done that over and over and over again, right? A modeling tool is so much cheaper than a process mining tool, right? Oh, by the way, your organization might not be ready because your process steps were the manual, there are no systems, right? So I don't think it's a clear-cut answer. What I know is that, quote-unquote, traditional process improvement methods, they work, right? Butcher block paper and stickies work. Stopwatches work, right? Process mining, right? And then if you have vendors who say, oh, before you can do process mining, you must integrate all 25 systems. That takes us about 12 months to do this, but then you get the most awesome dashboard, and then you get it, and then the tool, and that's, I think, my biggest grief with mining tools is they don't even give you an answer. They just show you how bad you are, right? So,
okay, so
I like it, but it's
I value your honesty, and it's trickling through some clear attitudes here. But to be honest, I was actually thinking more in the direction of what would you personally like to endeavor in, and for me also, I'm mainly engaged in big transformations. So it's like process documentation, establishing the BPM organization alongside a long strategic view. And I also see, that's why I personally would say, I really want to do a nice, let's say, quick and dirty process mining project, knowing that it's not going to be quick and dirty, but it's going to be also a long endeavor. However, it's going more, let's say, it's not top down, it's more bottom up. So it's like, it's going into singular cases where you say, let's make a difference today. Let's try and find something. And I know the world is big and there may be something even worse happening there, but I can drill down to something where I have evidence, and like a process excellence initiative, I change this process instance maybe now, today. And to a certain extent, I like that satisfaction about changing something today, and not saying, I'm going to set up, say, the baseline for change to happen in 5 years. And that's something...
Baseline?
Yeah, that's where...
What's your baseline, Russell?
No, you used the magic word. You used the trigger word, Russell. You used the trigger word. You saw them. For people listening to the podcast, please find this moment in time in the YouTube channel as well. You see the guys light up when Russell says baseline.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's definitely quick and definitely dirty.
But in all seriousness, Russell, that is a different question. If the question would have been, what are you more interested in, right? What do you think is the more, I don't know, don't want to say fancy. That's the thing. So if I'm more interested in process mining. And pitch, you've heard it here first, I'm writing a damn book about process mining right now, right?
No, I already read that on LinkedIn that you're doing that.
Yeah, I'm writing 2 books at the same time.
Oh,
Don't ask.
Well, how do you manage that with left and right hand at the same time?
Yeah, hey, I got 4 hands, but
he's just using AI. Don't worry, it's all AI generated.
And that's your lazy way. I'm old school. But the point is, what I like with process mining is not that negative example that I just said, oh, vendors will sell you all those integration, whatever. I think the way going forward, which is one of the proposals that I have, is do small projects. A month, 5 weeks, right? And The first one is always a learning experience. And Caspar, you work for a
I know
process mining
that.
vendor,
Yeah,
right?
I went
So
through a lot of them.
quick, right? Because you can do one project in 12 months, or you can do 12 projects in 1 year, right? And when you do the smaller ones, well, not only do you gain interest, you build up momentum. People say, hey, that process mining stuff, that's like the speedometer in my car. I want one too. Why do I drive that old car without a speedometer? Right? So I think that's the more successful one. And if you ask me what I'm currently more interested in, then it's that.
And Roland, the one point you mentioned about, say, what I do think, I mean, that's where the term process mining is not quite right. It is actually taking it that step further to the process excellence of then doing a change. So if I was engaged in a project where you use process mining methods and tools to identify the say something's not right there, but then getting virtually getting into a flight, going to the site and saying, what's up? How can we help? And what can we change here? That's when I think it's cool. And then you say like 12 projects over a year, and each time you're kind of identifying something like a nugget where process mining helps you identify where in the world there's something that you could dig into, but then have the mandate not just to report it up, but also
do something. Do something.
Get into the doing mode.
I can illustrate that very easily. So when I worked in the manufacturing industry, we were already quite mature on the process management part, so the modeling part. And then we started to venture into process mining. I'm talking about 2015, so quite early adopters, I would say. The first process that we onboarded on process mining was order to cash. Took 3 months in total, 12 weeks. The second one was procure to pay, took 8 weeks. The third one was plant maintenance, took 4 weeks. And after that, it was on average 4 weeks for a new complete functional process to be added into mining, because we knew how it worked. And instead of having to say, listen, we're going to do a major project where we're going to do these 4 or 5 different processes, it takes a year before any of them get done. You simply focus on the first, and then you go on to the second and the third.
I find it so interesting. Let me turn around the mirror now, Caspar. I ask you an either or question.
Oh, yes, please. 83 or 42?
42. Yes, 42 is right.
42.
Is process mining part of process management or not?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because you made the distinction. You know, and I thought
I
could catch you on the wrong foot. Damn.
Nice try, though. But trust me, I have this conversation in the company I work for, of course, on a daily basis. Which is very fine. Russell, I think looking at the time, we got room for one more. So give us your best last one.
Now you caught him on the wrong foot.
Yeah, no worries. I like to put him on the spot.
My list. So I have one. I'm just not quite sure how we have to phrase this thing. So this is around. So you have to choose in your setup of your BPM organization to go a very much centralized approach or a very, very decentralized approach, where you have like completely disjunct, defragmented process organizations that you establish then in let's say in the regions of the world for this enterprise. Do you say I want to have, do you go the more centralized approach where or do you take the decentralized approach?
I'm actually, I know it's a this or that, but there is a third option, and I'm a really big fan of it, which is why I want to talk about it. So there is a hybrid approach that I've taken before that I strongly, strongly recommend. What that hybrid approach means is a centralized function of governance and methodology. You need to have somebody that controls, at very minimum, the baseline upon which we build, right? What does our structure of a functional hierarchy look like? What is our methodology upon which we build? How are we delivering some of the capabilities that this creates? However, then I move completely decentralized and give everyone their own ability to play within the confines of that. I don't want a shared service organization that I have to call every time I want a process function. That's stupid. That's expensive. Oftentimes that's really cumbersome. And it's really like, it doesn't give people the freedom to work on their terms. So I want it decentralized as much as possible and building and growing its own little ecosystems and evolving and passing those insights back up. That's decentralized. But I do need something so that we're at least talking the same language. So that's the hybrid approach. And I see that not only in terms of the organization, but also in the way that they structure their information. So we all know about the idea of an object library, sort of reusable information concepts. I like to see that as a centralized object library for like corporate standards, and then private and individual separate object libraries for each business unit who wants to hide their own. Because fine, you have your own little like tool you use for HR tracking time. That's dumb. You should probably use a corporate standard, but I'm not going to come over there and like tell you have to. Someone else is going to have to do that. Not my job. So that you have your own object library separate to the work that you do, and people are taught to work from that instead of the central, fine, whatever, your call. But they still look the same type of object. And if I were to do a massive cross-reporting initiative, at least that would still work to hook them together. So I very much appreciate that third option of hybrid was centralized, minimum viable product control, and completely decentralized operations.
Which I think is very often called either a hub or spoke or a federated model as well. It's the same thing. Yeah, Roland.
So first of all, you cannot change the rules of the game, JM. That is not allowed. The inner German in me, and I know that Russell is cringing here as well. You can't. Right?
So Roland, you have to choose then.
Yeah, I do.
You made your own bet. Now you're going to lie in it.
I do not lie.
Lay in it. Sorry.
Yeah. I think let me give it a different twist. The reality in organizations is not that it's static, that there is a god-like structure, person, whatever, that builds the frame of the organization, the bones and the muscles and the skin and all that type of stuff, right? That's an illusion. The reality is you have projects, for good or bad. They start, they end, they build something, and then all the content won't get maintained until it breaks, and then people curse and say, it's even more work if we wouldn't have done it, But the reality is you do little things. And I think it's very, 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 very hard trying to attempt that supernatural, we plan everything from a centralized perspective, and you see where I'm going, right? From a centralized perspective setup. I had customers who I asked, they said, okay, what do you want to do? You bought our tool, right? And they came back and said, well, we're going to import APQC, and then we're going to manage our processes. I said, oh, that's very interesting. What does it actually mean? And then there came no answer, right? So the idea was there, whatever. They couldn't figure out the use cases. They couldn't. So long story short, I think it's and Caspar, I disagree with you. Hub, spoke and hub, versus decentralized. I don't know if it's that way. I would even say, no, it's decentralized with that little bit of central core that JM just said.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. That's what I meant. The thing that JM explained is also called the hub and spoke, where the hub is the centralized part and the spokes are actually the decentralized parts.
To me, how small can you make the hub is the big question.
And the hub can be very small. Yeah.
And I feel like hub and spoke often has more of that focus. But if you turn your eyes towards the hub, you miss the power and promise of really powerful spokes who themselves can become notorious.
Now there's one aspect I would like to bring in, because now what we're talking about is the ideal state when things have, say, kind of like matured, and then you have a hub and spoke, and that's fantastic. Now the challenge is, of course, that how do you make this, say, manifest itself? It doesn't just fall from heaven. So so here I think the challenge is that, to a certain extent, when we start BPM initiatives, you have you start with one in the, let's say, central. At some point there is this first initial spark or initiative to say you have the mandate to bring in BPM, and so the starting point is often a centralized approach, because there's one think tank, one project starting, and then from there I think the challenge is to then get into this letting go. By establishing this decentralized or hybrid-like functions, and when they are there, to give them more and more autarky. And I think that's where a lot of, initiatives fail in, this is mine, I've built it up, and taking too long to actually let go and then really give more autonomy to the locations. If they say, and as I say, even down to the tool, as long as they stick to certain standards, you should rather let them go, and but in a certain means. But that is the big challenge in getting there. So it's like over time, you would start off like in a centralized, like core, like initiative, and then driving in direction of this hybrid setup.
So let me, and I'd like to push back a little bit on this, right? And the example that I want to bring in is the three branches of government, right? Because what do? You define the rules of the game, right? The rules of engagement. So what do you have? You have people who do stuff, right? I think we all agree on these are people who do processes, who implement projects and all that type of stuff, right? Then you have the people who make the rules, right? Oh, we're going to use the same tool. Oh, we're using this standard and whatnot. And then you have the people who make decisions if you did it well, right? So now we're talking about solutions or solution portfolios, bigger groups that do stuff. We're talking about a COE, I hate that term, people who give a shit, right? Who come up with maintaining foundational stuff to others, right? That could be method support, that could be tools, that could be services that they provide. And then you have decision-making organizations like an architecture review board. And you know that I call them the committee of no, right? Most of them are NO, but the better ones are KNOW, right? Yeah. And now, Caspar, your hub and spoke model just disappears because now we have three different units that somehow, the system theoretical people in the rooms, please speak up, that somehow need to be in a balance. Or to say it in other words, Russell, what you just described was dictatorship. You move from dictatorship, one group that rules them all, to democracy, the balance of powers. Right?
I
Where do you
see
want to start?
Part 3 coming up, guys. I see a part 3 coming up.
We have to rename this episode would be called The Dark Side of BPM. It's kind of like, no matter what Russell, Caspar and JM giving positive like impulse, it's Roland is the destructive.
This is the one ring to rule them all, and I will drop it in the depth of Mordor.
Okay.
In order of, I mean, I'm always a timekeeper. I'm going to keep time. We need to wrap this up. I have one observation, and then I'm going to close it out. So you're all going to hush now.
So we can't speak.
I'm going to close this one out. I have an observation. We have a podcast. We've been spending the last half hour, 45 minutes with 4 guys having a combined BPM experience of close to a century, I would say. And we give you a simple choice in an exclusive gateway going yes or no, or A or B, or C or D, or 1 or 2. And all you come up with is, it depends.
Event-driven.
Thank you very much for listening, folks. Please join us for the next episode. Bye-bye.